It was just another ordinary afternoon at Joe's Diner, a cozy spot in town where the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling burgers filled the air. The laughter of customers echoed, waitresses zipped from table to table, and life seemed, well, normal, but little did anyone know that day would change everything. In the corner of this cheerful chaos stood Emma. She wasn't just any waitress. Emma had a reputation. Her radiant smile and warm heart had a way of making everyone feel like they belonged, no matter who they were. And then, the door creaked open. A man stepped in, a man who didn't quite fit the picture. His clothes were tattered, his shoes were worn down, and on his head sat a faded red hat with bold white letters. Make America Great Again. The room fell silent for just a moment. Conversation stuttered, and eyes darted toward him. But Emma, she didn't hesitate. With the same kindness she showed every customer, she greeted him with a smile. Now, you might think this is just a simple story of kindness, but what happened next will make you question everything. Because Emma's decision to serve this man, to treat him with dignity, would cost her everything. Her job, her dignity, her future. Or so it seemed. And just when all hope was lost, something extraordinary happened. Who was the man who walked through those diner doors just 28 minutes later? Why was he there? And how would he change Emma's life forever? Stay with me because this is a story you won't forget. Emma noticed him right away, sitting quietly in the farthest corner of the diner, almost as if he wished to disappear into the walls. Ben! His MAGA hat was unmistakable, his hands clasped tightly together, and his eyes spoke of a life weighed down by struggles. Around him, the whispers started. Co-workers exchanged disapproving glances. Customers sneered or shook their heads, murmuring under their breaths. But Emma? She didn't flinch. Instead, she grabbed a plate of the diner's special, a steaming hot meal, and made her way over to him. Here you go, she said softly, placing the plate in front of Ben. Her voice carried warmth, the kind of kindness that could melt even the coldest heart. Ben's eyes widened, disbelief mixed with gratitude. Thank you, he mumbled, his voice cracking. But not everyone saw it the same way. From the back office, the sound of heavy footsteps grew louder. The door slammed open, and there he was, Mr. Stevens, the diner's owner, his face red with anger. Emma! He bellowed, his voice cutting through the diner like a knife. The room fell silent. Everyone turned to watch. What do you think you're doing? Emma stood her ground, her voice steady. I'm serving a customer, Mr. Stevens. That's my job. But Stevens wasn't having it. He jabbed a finger toward Ben. We don't serve people like him here. You've got no right bringing that kind of attention to this place. The tension in the room was palpable. Eyes darted between Emma and Stevens, the clash of values playing out for everyone to see. He's hungry, Emma shot back, her voice rising with quiet conviction. And kindness doesn't care about politics or appearances. But Stevens wasn't moved. His face twisted in disdain. Kindness won't pay the bills, Emma. You're done here. Pack your things. The words hit like a thunderclap. Emma stood frozen, the weight of humiliation crashing down as murmurs spread through the diner. Her coworkers averted their eyes. Some customers looked away, while others smirked. As Emma gathered her things, Ben got up, his eyes filled with guilt. I'm so sorry, he stammered. This is my fault. Emma stopped, turning to face him. No, Ben, this isn't your fault. Some things are just worth standing up for. With that, she walked out, leaving behind the diner, her job, and the life she thought she knew. But what neither Emma nor anyone else in that diner knew was that this wasn't the end. In fact, the clock was already ticking, and in just 28 minutes, everything would change. With her apron clutched tightly in her hands, Emma stepped out of the diner for what felt like the last time. The door swung shut behind her, and with it, the life she had carefully held together seemed to crumble. Tears blurred her vision as she walked into the cool afternoon air, her belongings stuffed hastily into a worn bag. Every step felt heavier than the last, In her mind, questions swirled. How am I going to pay the rent? What about the bills? And what about Lily? Lily, her little sister, depended on Emma for everything. The thought of letting her down made Emma's chest tighten. As she reached the corner of the street, a voice called out, faint but desperate. Emma, wait! She turned to see Ben, his frail figure hurrying toward her, clutching the very MAGA hat that had sparked the chaos. He stopped in front of her, breathing hard, and held out the hat with trembling hands. I want you to have this, he said, his voice filled with emotion. It's all I have to give, but I'll never forget what you did for me. You're the kindest person I've ever met. Emma's heart ached at his words. She gently pushed the hat back toward him. Ben, no. You keep it. What I did wasn't for thanks or recognition. Kindness. It doesn't come with strings attached. Ben's eyes glistened, and for a moment the weight of their shared struggles seemed lighter. Emma placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Things will get better, she said softly, though deep down she wasn't sure if she believed it herself. As Ben walked away, Emma stood alone on the sidewalk, staring at the bustling city around her. She felt small, insignificant, like the world was moving on without her. But what Emma didn't realize was that someone had been watching, someone who had seen everything unfold. Unseen to her from a quiet corner of the diner, a man had observed her act of selflessness, the confrontation, and her unwavering compassion. And now that man was making a decision, one that would change Emma's life forever. What happens next? Stay with me, because this story is just getting started. 28 minutes passed. Just 28 minutes since Emma's life had been turned upside down. She sat on a weathered bench down the street, her bag of belongings resting by her side. Her mind raced, worrying about her rent, her bills, her sister Lily. What now? Back at the diner, the familiar clinking of plates and hum of conversation carried on as though nothing had happened. But then, the quiet was broken by the low rumble of an engine. A sleek black SUV, polished to perfection, pulled up to the curb. Its tinted windows gleamed under the afternoon sun, reflecting the diner and everyone inside. Heads turned. The doors didn't open right away, adding a layer of mystery to this unexpected arrival. And then, with a deliberate grace, the door opened. A man stepped out, tall, impeccably dressed, with an air of authority that instantly commanded attention. His dark suit was tailored, his shoes polished, and his demeanor calm but purposeful. This man was Mr. Anderson. He strode into the diner, his presence like a storm breaking over a still ocean. The hum of chatter died down. Mr. Anderson scanned the room, his sharp gaze landing on Mr. Stevens, the diner owner who had so cruelly fired Emma just moments before. "Excuse me," Mr. Anderson said, his voice measured but firm. "I'm looking for someone, a waitress named Emma." The mention of her name sent a ripple through the room. Mr. Stevens stiffened, his expression shifting from annoyance to uncertainty. He stammered, "Emma? She doesn't work here anymore." Mr. Anderson tilted his head slightly, his gaze unflinching. "I know," he said simply. "That's why I'm here." The mystery deepened. Who was this man? Why was he asking for Emma? What did he want? Meanwhile, just down the street, Emma sat lost in thought when she noticed the black SUV parked outside the diner. She watched as Mr. Anderson stepped out and entered, her curiosity piqued. Back inside, Mr. Anderson turned back toward the diner patrons and said, "I was here earlier today. I witnessed something remarkable. A waitress who showed compassion and courage in the face of hostility. That kind of kindness is rare, and it deserves to be rewarded." By now, whispers spread like wildfire among the customers. Mr. Stevens stood frozen, his face pale as Mr. Anderson continued. "Her name," he said, his voice clear, "is Emma. And I'm here to make her an offer." The room buzzed with speculation, but Mr. Anderson didn't linger. He stepped back outside, his gaze scanning the street. And then he saw her, Emma, sitting on the bench, her head resting in her hands. As he approached, Emma looked up, startled to see this well-dressed man walking toward her. She quickly stood, unsure of what to expect. "Emma," he said, a warm smile softening his features. "I'm Mr. Anderson. I own a chain of high-end restaurants across the state. I was in the diner earlier today, and I saw what you did." Emma blinked, confused. "What I did?" she asked hesitantly. Mr. Anderson nodded. "Your kindness, your willingness to stand up for what's right, even when it came at a cost. That kind of character is exactly what I look for in my team." Her breath caught as his words sunk in. "Wait, what are you saying?" "I'm offering you a management position in one of my restaurants," Mr. Anderson said plainly. "Better pay, better hours, and full benefits. I believe the world needs more people like you, Emma. People who lead with kindness and integrity." Emma's eyes widened, her heart racing. For a moment, she could barely speak. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Say yes," Mr. Anderson said with a kind smile, "because people like you deserve opportunities to shine. You deserve to be rewarded for doing the right thing." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. She wanted to protest, to tell him she wasn't worthy, but something in Mr. Anderson's steady gaze told her that he truly believed in her. And at that moment, Emma realized something. Sometimes when you give kindness to the world finds a way to give it back. But this wasn't the end. No, this was just the beginning of a life Emma had never dared to imagine. As Emma stepped back toward the diner, her heart raced. She didn't know what to expect, but one thing was certain. This wasn't just any ordinary visit. She wasn't walking back in as the girl who had been humiliated and fired in front of everyone. No, this time she was different. She was walking in with Mr. Anderson by her side, the man who had seen her act of kindness and recognized her worth when no one else would. They reached the diner's doorstep, and as the door swung open, the familiar sounds of the bustling diner seemed to pause for a moment. The clatter of dishes and the murmur of conversations fell to the background as Mr. Anderson stepped forward, his presence commanding the room. He was here for more than just a meal. He was here to make a point. Mr. Stevens, standing behind the counter, caught sight of him immediately. His face turned pale and he straightened up, visibly rattled. He hadn't expected to see this man again, especially not like this. Mr. Anderson didn't waste a second. "Mr. Stevens," he said, his tone sharp, "I hope you remember me. I was here earlier today observing what happened with your employee, Emma." Emma stepped forward, standing tall beside him. She locked eyes with Mr. Stevens, who now looked like a deer caught in headlights. "What's going on here?" Mr. Stevens stammered, trying to regain his composure. Mr. Anderson's gaze was unwavering as he addressed him. "What I witnessed today was nothing short of disgraceful. You fired this young woman in front of a room full of people, simply for showing a bit of kindness to someone who needed it. You insulted her, and in doing so, you showed your true colors as a leader." The room fell silent. Emma could feel the weight of the moment settling in. This was the confrontation she had never expected, the moment where everything turned. But it wasn't over. Mr. Anderson stepped back, his voice booming across the diner. "I've made a decision," he said, pausing for dramatic effect. "I'm buying this diner. It's time to turn this place around, into a community-focused establishment where people are treated with respect, where kindness isn't just tolerated, it's celebrated. I'll make sure this is a place where people like Emma, people with integrity and heart, have a chance to thrive." The shock hit Mr. Stevens like a ton of bricks. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He had no idea who he was dealing with. This wasn't just any businessman. This was someone with power, influence, and the heart to make real change. But Mr. Anderson wasn't done. He turned to Ben, who had been quietly sitting in the corner, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Ben," he said, "I've got a job for you, a chance to get back on your feet. You deserve better than what you've been through, and I'm going to make sure you have the opportunity to rebuild your life." Ben's eyes welled up with gratitude, but the words he wanted to say stuck in his throat. The kindness he had received from Emma was now being extended to him, and for the first time in a long while he felt hope. As the room sat in stunned silence, Emma turned to Mr. Anderson. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Mr. Anderson smiled, his expression warm but firm. "You don't have to say anything, Emma. This is what you've earned. You've shown the world what true kindness looks like. You deserve this chance to rise above everything." Emma took a deep breath. This was it. This was her chance, her redemption. She turned back to face the diner, the place that had once seemed like her worst nightmare, but now it was the place where her new life would begin. She was no longer just the waitress who had been fired. She was the woman who had stood up for what was right, and in doing so, had found something better than she could ever imagine. With a firm nod, she looked at Mr. Anderson. "I'll take the job," she said, her voice steady. "And I'll keep doing what I've always done. I'll keep showing kindness to those who need it, no matter the cost. Because that's what truly matters." And as Emma stood there, surrounded by the very people who had once doubted her, she knew one thing for sure. Kindness always finds a way to come back around. A few weeks have passed, and the diner, once a place of tension and judgment, is now a beacon of hope and community. The lights shine brighter, the air feels warmer, and the laughter that once seemed distant is now a constant hum of goodwill. It's a transformation not just of the diner, but of the people who walk through its doors. Emma, now the successful manager, stands behind the counter with a sense of pride she never thought possible. The once timid, uncertain waitress is now a confident leader, respected not only by her team but by everyone who enters this newly reimagined diner. Her smile is no longer just a courtesy. It's a symbol of her strength, her resilience, and the kindness she never let go of, no matter the cost. And then there's Ben. Remember him? The man who, just a few short weeks ago, was struggling to survive on the streets? He's no longer the quiet, broken soul who entered that diner with nothing. Today, he walks in with his head held high, his confidence restored, and his dignity intact. Thanks to the compassion Emma showed him, Ben has a new job, a fresh start, and most importantly, a future. The moral of this story? It's simple but powerful. Kindness, even in the face of adversity, can change everything. One small act, like offering a meal to a homeless man, can ripple through lives in ways you can't even imagine. We live in a world where it's easy to ignore those in need, to turn a blind eye to the struggles of others. But what if, just what if, we decided to take a stand for kindness? What if we didn't let fear, judgment, or even personal loss stop us from doing what's right? As Emma proved, doing the right thing doesn't always bring instant rewards, but sometimes it brings something even better. A chance to change your life and the lives of others in ways you never thought possible. So I leave you with this question. What would you do if you were in Emma's shoes? Would you stand up for kindness, even at the cost of your job? Would you do what's right, even when the world tells you not to? The choice, like always, is yours. But remember, sometimes the greatest rewards come from the risks we take when we choose kindness over fear. What if you were faced with a moment like Emma's? A chance to show kindness when no one else would, when the consequences seemed too high? What would you do? I want to hear your thoughts. Have you ever witnessed or been part of an act of kindness that changed everything? Share your story in the comments below. Let's inspire each other with the power of compassion and remind ourselves that doing the right thing, no matter the cost, is always worth it. And if you're moved by this story, if you believe in the power of kindness, make sure to subscribe. There are more stories just like this, stories that will restore your faith in humanity, one act of kindness at a time. So, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey, because together we can make the world a better place, one good deed at a time.